I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but I haven't came around towards actually recording, sitting down and really thinking about this. But it's been on my mind for a while. Um, I've, as of right now, I am interning with Boston Sports Journal, and I'm helping out doing live coverages for their website. So I've been able to watch a lot of Bruins games. I've probably watched about all but like 10 games, something along those lines. But yeah, this overall, it's been a very disappointing season for the Bruins. They, despite them being a playoff team, they are about a 500 team right now. I think they have 21 wins, something along the lines of that. They just snapped a 6-game losing streak, and they have finally won their first game in 2025. Simply put, they just haven't been playing good hockey right now, and it's been a consistent theme this entire season. So I honestly want to voice my opinion as to why the Bruins are really bad this year, because they are really bad. And yeah, just considering I've watched a lot of their games this season and have a good idea as to why they are bad, and just want to let Bruins fans that have not really, or just sports fans in general that haven't really watched the Bruins a lot this year and are wondering why this team that a lot of people expected to make the playoffs and have consistently made the playoffs for a while are not playing to their level. Well, this is the video for you. So, yeah, why do the Bruins suck in 2025? I think, simply put, this is probably the worst roster the Bruins have had in a while. Just overall, this roster construction is not great, and we're finally seeing this consistent playoff team with an aging core and just a lot of things just not working out the way they've wanted to finally start to decline. The Bruins are still trying to become a championship contending team, and honestly, especially over the past 2 to 3 years, after their 2018-2019 season where they made the Stanley Cup playoffs, that was really what it seemed like their best chance at winning the Stanley Cup. Obviously, they were one game away from winning it, but obviously they lost to the St. Louis Blues in probably the most depressing game I've ever seen in all of sports. It sucked watching that game as a Bruins fan, and yeah, I don't think I can ever live down that loss. But yeah, after a while, that core started to deteriorate, and then around the 2020-2021 season, even the 2022 season too, those just both weren't great seasons, and it really just seemed like a lot of people were kind of writing the Bruins off. But then obviously they were still trying to buy in. It wasn't any sense like that, but honestly, a lot of Bruins fans and a lot of teams expected, this team to start dwindling down in 2023, 2024, but it ended up not being the case. I mean, obviously in 2023, they had possibly the best points-wise, the best regular season team of all time, which is just insane to think about when really a lot of people were expecting this team to not make the playoffs. But yeah, obviously we know what happened this year. We obviously know what happened last year. But overall, a lot of people expected the Bruins to hit this sudden decline, and yet they haven't done it the past 2 years. I think a lot of people have jumped the gun on it, and it's finally catching up for the Bruins. All these chances of them becoming contenders, all these opportunities where they've put their chips into the tables, getting players, for example, I guess recently Tyler Bertuzzi, Dmitry Orlov, Last year they didn't really buy anyone, but who else? I guess free agency examples would be this offseason, Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm. Um, who else? Like, I guess just players like that, and also extensions such as, this is a later extension, but Charlie Coyle, Hampus Lindholm, guys like that. They've just been trying to keep this contending window open, and they're keeping all these core guys and a lot of guys that they've been able to give extensions to, and they just haven't gotten that support in their, I guess, complementary role players. Simply put, I guess, just, I know a lot of people have been saying fire Sweeney, and honestly, I don't blame it. I don't blame you. It's not, I agree with a lot of Bruins fans in that regards of to fire Don Sweeney, but for as much as Don Sweeney has been a bad GM, a lot of people are saying, yeah, the Bruins don't have any entry-level contracts up in the NHL. I guess the only player this year has been Fabian Lysell, who has literally played 1 game for the Bruins so far in his NHL career. The Bruins have put a lot of, I do agree they haven't been drafting great, but I mean, year in and year out, Sweeney has been a consistent buyer, trading away pretty much their entire prospect pool to keep this championship window open. And it's just, again, kind of just how, as I've been going to, eventually that championship window, or I guess that contending window, is going to close, and I just think that it's happening right now. So as much as Don Sweeney has been getting a lot of criticism with a lot of what he's been doing, I don't think he should get as much blame as he should be. Do I think the Bruins need to move on from their front office and everything like that? I definitely agree, but I don't think it's all on the GM, considering Don Sweeney has put the Bruins in a pretty good position. Like, the Bruins could have honestly, this championship window could have honestly went out the shitter like 3 years ago, and the fact that he's been able to keep the Bruins contending, keep getting these players and everything like that, trade-wise, Don Sweeney has been amazing for the most part. I'll say, I don't think he's been, again, this exceptional GM, but I do believe that he's been overhated. But when it comes to his signings and draft, or his contracts that he's given out, the extensions he has given out, and just the overall drafting that he's been displaying, there's definitely been a lot of misses. And this year has been a clear example about this. Again, the Bruins are still trying to keep this this playoff window open, and they did it by signing Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm, two established players, or just, yeah, two very coveted free agents this offseason. At the time when they were signed, I really liked the Elias Lindholm signing, just getting a guy in the middle between, I guess, Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak, kind of just filling this Patrice Bergeron role. It made a lot of sense. And yeah, I did like the signing at the time. Nikita Zadorov, I got it to a certain extent. Like, it made sense, the signing, a little bit, and I was happy that he did get acquired, but I thought that contract was not worth what he is. I did not think the contract for Nikita Zadorov was what he deserved. And honestly, I guess even with, definitely with Elias Lindholm, his contract has been terrible this year, but I just don't think this Zadorov signing has been great either. So those two big additions that the Bruins have gotten in, it just hasn't worked right now. But I guess now I'll talk about just the season itself, but I'm kind of just giving a broad reason as to why just the Bruins why it shouldn't be a surprise the Bruins are bad right now, because this championship or this contending window is finally closing, and we're kind of seeing the end of it right now. Um, but yeah, again, just the signings haven't been great. Sweeney has still been able to, and the Bruins have still tried to keep this window open too. They're trying to maintain this core by giving these extensions to, for example, Charlie Coyle, which I think is not a good contract. Even the Charlie McAvoy contract, $9.5 million for McAvoy, I think that's a little bit pricey. Hampus Lindholm, that's not turning out to be a great contract. Pasternak's, I mean, it's fine for what Pasternak is right now. I know he's not playing up to the level he's been playing. I'm fine with the contract right now. You need to get that contract. And another contract a contract extension that Sweeney has given out was to Jeremy Swayman most recently. Obviously, that was a huge thing for the Bruins this year, or this offseason, was paying Jeremy Swayman, him holding out all of training camp and not signing his deal until literally the day of their first game against the Florida Panthers. I get it for Swayman. He wants his money. I have no issues with him wanting that money. I know a lot of Bruins fans have been very hypercritical of Swayman, considering he hasn't been playing well. And I get it. And I think a reason as to why it's been that way is because Swayman did not play all of training camp. He kind of just went into the season cold. I'm sure he was, practicing, but just not with the Bruins. So he hasn't really had, I guess, per se, he hasn't had an NHL training camp because he was been holding out the entire time. So he went into the season cold, and we're kind of seeing it. Yes, Jeremy Swayman hasn't been playing up to that contract, but I don't think he has played as bad. And yes, I know a lot of Bruins fans have also been saying, oh, we chose the wrong goalie, this, that. That's just far from true. 32 of all 32 GMs would make the same decision, giving up Ullmark and keeping Jeremy Swayman. I mean, the dude outplayed a Vezina winner as a 25-year-old goalie. What he did in the playoffs last year, especially against the Maple Leafs, he was the reason why we won that series, or the Bruins won that series. So saying that he is not worth that contract and the Bruins chose the wrong goalie is utter fucking bullshit. Shut up, and it's just not true. I understand he's not doing great right now, but it's just 2020 vision with a lot of people. Yes, yes, it does suck right now considering Swayman hasn't been playing too well, and, Ullmark has been playing very great with the Senators right now, but it's a move we needed to make. And also, the trade, a lot of people have also been, shitting on the trade back for Ullmark. I know a lot of people, especially at the rumors of the beginning, when Ullmark was going dealt, it was like, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for Ullmark. I don't think that was going to happen in a million years. Also, discussions about a lottery pick and things like that. It could have happened, but I think just a lot of GMs were kind of just playing the waiting game because they knew that the Bruins needed to deal him just for value's sake and just for contract's sake, because they didn't want to pay two goalies. Swayman's getting paid $8.5, I believe. Ullmark right now, his cap pay is at $5 million. So they don't want to pay two goalies $13 million or whatever like that, or something like that. So it makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I think the return was fine for the Bruins. Korpisalo, as much as a lot of people have been criticizing him, he has played solid for a backup goalie right now. Sure, he hasn't been anything great, but considering that's the goalie we got, and considering the dude was at one point waived, or I think he was bought out, waived, something like that, by the Senators originally, and the, I guess, goaltending performances we got from him right now, yeah, he's just been fine. I don't think he's been anything exceptional, anything great, but he hasn't been awful for the Bruins, I guess. And then we also got Marcus Stellick, who we actually extended, and I think he's been a great player for the Bruins, just as a fourth line checking player. I'm gonna get into him a little bit later, but nonetheless, it was a fine trade for what happened, and honestly, it was a deal that the Bruins needed to make. Um, I guess just overall, this or I guess Swayman isn't really the reason why the Bruins suck right now. Sure, he hasn't been helping, but it's the play from both an offensive and defensive perspective that has really been the reason why the Bruins have sucked. Again, I'm going to say it again. Their roster construction hasn't been great. It really feels like this Bruins team lacks an identity right now. Just overall, it's just been a weird season for them. Um, Another thing that I'm just going to be critical of Sweeney about and agree with Bruins fans on, and just fans of the NHL, is how they handled the Jim Montgomery situation. It really felt that, well, first off, I'll say, did Jim Montgomery deserve to be fired? Yes and no. So going into the season, Montgomery was in need of an extension. He didn't get it, and it really just seemed like Sweeney was putting pressure on Montgomery to just kind of figure it out. And so with Montgomery's job on the line, it just felt like Montgomery was getting pressured, and he knew that just like one little mess up, or just like if the Bruins decline at any single level, or he just doesn't, or if things just don't go well to start, then he was just going to get canned. And it really seemed like that was the case when Montgomery just started, or when the season just started, in the 20 games that Montgomery was the coach of the Bruins this season. Like, obviously the Bruins weren't playing that great to start. Their offense was inconsistent. This was especially at the beginning when Swayman was just getting back, played very bad goaltending, and it just seemed like Montgomery was just really, I wouldn't even say panicking, but he knew his job was on the line. He was switching up the lines almost every single night. And yeah, it just ended up resulting, just the writing was on the wall. He was going to get fired, and I just did not like the way management handled that situation, because I do think Montgomery is a good head coach. I think that when Montgomery was hired for the Bruins, it made a lot of sense. This is just my personal opinion, but the reason why Montgomery was brought in for the Bruins is because they need a guy that can positively uplift the Bruins. And I mean, if we didn't fire Bruce Cassidy, we wouldn't have had guys like Krejci or Patrice Bergeron. I mean, it isn't ironic considering David Krejci wanted to play a year overseas the last year that Bruce Cassidy was the head coach, and then once he got fired, he came over. I'm just kind of just calling it spade a spade. But regardless, yeah, Jim Montgomery was a good head coach, but it just, I mean, especially with head coaches in the NHL, I think I read this on The Athletic, but they have the shortest career span out of any single of the four professional head coaches, for example, like the NBA, NHL, MLB, things like that, and even like, I guess, soccer managers. I think I read that somewhere, but they have a very short leash, and just when things don't go the way it goes, coaches get canned before players get, I guess, any form of punishment. So that's just how it goes. So yeah, that just came a certain thing, and it kind of did when after Montgomery did get fired. It kind of did. The Bruins did kind of elevate their play a little bit. The good thing about Sacco was that he came in and he, I guess, established a set line and he kept the chemistry going. Like Montgomery was changing lines, just trying to keep his job in check because I felt like he knew that he was going to get fired, so he was just trying to find something, some form of success, just hoping it sticks to the wall, and it just eventually just didn't end up working out. Sacco did the opposite, and he kept lines together. Currently, I guess the consistent lines, it kind of has fluctuated, especially with the top six, but the set lineup for the Bruins right now is Zacha, or for the first line, Zacha at center, left wing Geeky, right wing McAvoy, or not McAvoy, I'm stupid. David Pastrnak, and then second line Lindholm, Marchand, and then Coyle, but then Marchand and Coyle and Brazo kind of switch off, but I don't know. You kind of get the picture. They've kind of had more consistency, and he had more consistent lines, and it worked out a little bit. But now that Sacco has played more games than Montgomery this year, and kind of just that whole thing happened, this team's, I guess, honestly, I can fully say that this team is the way. There's no smoking mirrors with this team anymore, and it just simply comes down to the fact that this team isn't talented enough. So I guess this is a long-winded way of getting into just their on-ice performance now. I don't know exactly how I kind of transitioned into this right now because I don't even know how I got here right now. I was talking about Montgomery right now, and then I guess getting into the season, I'm just going to go into the on-ice, what I see from these games now. And again, simply put, this team does not have offensive talent. And again, as I was kind of saying before, this team probably has the worst roster they've had in probably 2015, 2016, probably the last time this team has made the playoffs. Just overall from a top six perspective, this team just lacks offense. Besides the Islanders, this team has the worst power play in the NHL, and if it weren't for the Islanders being such a god-awful power play, this team would be by far the worst power play. They just struggle so much trying to keep the puck in their offensive zone, and it just results in a lack of chances on the power play. Like I'll give you a prime example. I'll give you the perfect example of how our power play goes for the Bruins. So once a power play gets called, they'll get into the offensive zone. Usually Elias Lindholm will take the draw. He'll lose the draw. The other team gets the puck, dumps it down the ice. Bruins have to regroup. When the Bruins get the regroup, either they'll get into the zone really quickly, or they'll either get into the offensive zone for a little bit, or whoever's carrying the puck into the offensive zone gets pickpocketed at the blue line, and then the cycle repeats, and it happens 2 or 3 more times, and then by the time the Bruins finally get a consistent time in the offensive zone, the power play ends, and the Bruins are left with like 1 or 2 shots if they are lucky. As much as David Pastrnak has been, considered one of the best offensive scorers in the NHL by a lot of people, I have a lot of concerns with his puck handling. Because a lot of the times, I guess a perfect example is in their game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. This was the 6th game of their 6-game losing streak. So it was the last game that the Bruins have lost. I'm recording this the day of their 2nd game against Tampa Bay Lightning. The game before that was the game against the Panthers, which they won in overtime. But David Pastrnak was carrying the puck into the offensive zone, and I forget exactly who pickpocketed him. I think it was Brandon Hagel, but Brandon Hagel took the puck, went on a breakaway, or honestly even like a one-on-one. I forget who the defenseman was. I think it was Mason Lohrei, but he shot it. He missed, but the puck ricocheted. No other Bruin was left, and Anthony Cirelli buried an easy goal, shorthanded for the Lightning. So again, that's just kind of just how the power play has gone. They just haven't been able to win puck battles. or just consistently get the puck on their stick. And it's not just a power play issue. It's just an issue that the Bruins have dealt with this entire season. I guess a prime example of this would be, or not even a prime example, but they just can't win puck battles in general. Like, they just lack physicality. Besides Mark Kostelic, who, again, I'm not trying to like defend Don Sweeney at any aspect whatsoever, but Kostelic was a guy that Sweeney brought in this season, and for his role, he's played very well. And again, he just got signed to an extension. I believe he completely deserves it. It's a great value contract too, $1 million, 3 years for $1 million for a guy that's going to be an exceptional fourth liner for the Bruins. I really like it. The only issue I have with Kostelic is that he can sometimes have a hot head. He'll get penalties and kind of just the wheels can come off a few times with him. But other than that, he's a great checking forward, and he's exactly what you need out of a fourth liner. So I really like that. But again, kind of just getting back to my point, there's not a lot of physicality on this team. And so that has also resulted in them not winning puck battles. I guess a prime example is, or I keep saying prime example, but Nikita Zadorov. You brought this guy in because this dude is just a physical specimen. You know, he's known to be a physical, defensive-minded defenseman who can knock guys off the puck and just help the Bruins maintain possession of the puck. And Zadorov hasn't done it this season. I don't know exactly why it's been the case, but he just hasn't been a physical player. Albeit, I haven't really seen a lot of Nikita Zadorov because over the last, I guess, in his previous seasons, he played for the Calgary Flames and the Canucks, so I haven't really seen him because he's playing across, I guess, the country, and he's playing Pacific time, so I haven't really gone to see him, but I expected him to come in and become this physical presence, and he just hasn't really done that. So that just hasn't gone well for them. Just overall, the pairing of Nikita Zadorov and Charlie McAvoy have played together as the top defensive pair this entire season, and it just hasn't worked for either of them. I don't think that they're a great pairing together. I don't know exactly about it, but I don't know exactly how. It's just like their chemistry does not mix. Like, for example, Charlie McAvoy will sometimes get into the play, or like they're just not on page. Like, I don't exactly know how to describe it, but they just don't really work out, and it just leads to some really bad goals with them on the ice. Again, yeah, Charlie McAvoy hasn't really played the best this season. And I think, again, I just think that this pairing just doesn't work out for them. Having Zadorov, I just don't think the Bruins are playing Zadorov in the role that he was meant out to be. Again, I feel like considering he's playing as, I guess, the top defensive pair, one of the top two defensemen on the Bruins, he's expected to be sort of have a different playing style, when I just consider him more as like a third pairing or a second pairing that's just there to, wreak havoc and just get players off the puck and everything like that. He just hasn't done it, so that just hasn't worked this year for them. And again, Charlie McAvoy hasn't had the best season as well. I just think that in order for Charlie McAvoy to really succeed, I think he needs an offensive, I don't think Charlie McAvoy's this offensive. He isn't an offense. He's a two-way defenseman where he's an exceptional skater and everything like that, but he's not a player that should be, the quarterback of a power play. Like, he doesn't have necessarily those top-notch offensive instincts like a guy, I guess, like Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes. Like, he's not an offensive-minded defenseman. He's a two-way defenseman, in my opinion, where he can add in a little bit of scoring here and there, but again, he's not this exceptional scorer, and I really think that the Bruins need a guy like that for McAvoy, and it just hasn't really worked like that. I guess the only defensive-minded or offensive-minded defenseman that the Bruins have is Mason Lohrei, and Lohrei is he's an interesting player because he's one of the younger players on this Bruins team. I believe he's 23. He's really talented. Don't get me wrong, but there's just a lot of he's been, especially at the beginning, he was scratched a lot when Montgomery was there, and now he's getting consistent playing time. But again, he scored a great goal against the Tampa Bay during that first game against each other. But just defensively, he has a lot to learn. Like offensively, for a defenseman, he's extremely talented, but I see a lot more potential in the dude. He's 6'4". He's like 200 pounds. Like, if he can be a little bit more physical, this dude can definitely be a successful defenseman in this league and can get more playing time. But there's definitely been a lot to be desired. So I guess kind of just going off of my defensive concerns, this team, again, this is just a mismanagement of their roster right now, and just a lot of puzzle pieces that just aren't fitting together. Another player that I kind of want to, I guess, rip into per se is Brandon Carlo, who honestly might be playing the worst season out of every single Bruins player. Probably the most disappointing player on the Bruins, I'd say, just because it just seems like every single time he's been playing on the ice, and by all means, I'm not trying to be upset about these players. I'm not trying to say it. I'm just saying it how it is. But every single time I've seen this guy on the ice, there hasn't been anything that he's really done. Obviously, Carlo is more so a defensive defenseman that can move the puck, things like that. He's a bigger body, can block shots, things like that. And he just hasn't been doing anything like that. As of right now, he is... I know giveaways isn't really a big stat that a lot of people, I guess, throw around in the NHL world and everything and things like that, but he has the most giveaways. This is a little bit above the halfway mark of the NHL season, and Carlo has the most giveaways he's had in his entire NHL career this year, which is honestly something interesting. But again, he's been he also has a negative plus minus for the first time in his career, so he just hasn't been playing too well. And with a cap hit of $4 million for a guy that hasn't been performing whatsoever, hasn't had barely any points considering he's played every single game this year, it's just $4 million that is just kind of going to waste in my opinion. So I guess again, it's going back to, I guess, the contract extension Sweeney has given out, overpaying guys. And again, a guy like Charlie McAvoy or Charlie Coyle per se, even I guess Charlie McAvoy, which I think I did mention, but $9.5 million for McAvoy is a little bit of the higher end. Yeah, do I want to talk about any other people on defense for the Bruins? Honestly, as of right now, the most consistent player, the most consistent defenseman for Boston, honestly, has been Andrew Peeke, who was he was a player that he actually did get extended for the Bruins, I believe, but he was traded from Columbus last year in last year's trade deadline. He's not going to be a player that shows up in the stat sheet. He's not going to be a player that a lot of people look at and, see and just be like, oh yeah, Peeke is just... He's not a notable player. He's just a stay-at-home defenseman, but he makes all the right plays, and he has been, honestly, a silver lining for the Bruins this year. So I just want to shout out Andrew Peeke real quick, because as much as the defensive core sucks, it hasn't been all that bad. Has been some bright spots. And then also Hampus Lindholm being injured hasn't helped either. He didn't do too much when he was in the Bruins lineup, but he's definitely better being in the Bruins. He's definitely benefits the Bruins being on the ice compared to being off the ice, so that has definitely also hurt. But I want to go into the offense, or I guess I'm going to transition into the forwards in this team. I kind of mentioned it before, but I kind of did. But yeah, just their power play. Besides Pastrnak, from time to time, he'll have a stretch where he'll score a couple goals or rack up a couple points in a certain game. And Brad Marchand, who has by far been the MVP of this team. I'm going to give my flowers to Marchand because if Marchand hasn't been playing, I know, actually, before I get into that, I know a lot of people outside of Bruins fans, they hate Marchand. They call him classless, everything like that. I've been really impressed with Brad Marchand and his leadership. Obviously, or I guess, when Marchand was first named the captain, or just when Marchand, nobody expected Marchand to be a captain, like ever, just considering the antics he does and all the stupid suspensions and everything like that. But I've been really impressed with him as a captain this year. He's really stepped up, really been a lead by example type of guy for the Bruins. And as of recently, there was this situation, I think it's happened like 2 or 3 days ago, where I forget exactly the guy who it is, but a radio host for WEI went on and ripped Marchand and Pastrnak, saying they don't want to play with each other, and just basically more so ripped David Pastrnak and just like called him out. And Marchand got interviewed and was talked about this, and he just ripped the guy and just basically told him how it is and just basically stood up for Pastrnak. I was really happy about that. And he even just went on Instagram and posted like him and Pastrnak having like no problems with each other. So I felt like that was a great moment. But with the highs and lows that more so the lows that the Bruins have had this season, Marchand has really stepped up to the plate and has been the best player for the Bruins this year. So honestly, shout out to him. Despite him not putting up the greatest offensive season, I think he will be, at least he's my vote to be the Bruins All-Star this season. So I really want him to make the All-Star. I really hope that they don't even have an All-Star team, All-Star game this season. It's 4 nations. Sorry, I'm stupid. But if there were to be an All-Star game this season, by far Brad Marchand would be the guy. But yeah, just there hasn't been a lot of complimentary scoring. Morgan Geekie from time to time he'll add in a couple goals, but he hasn't really done much offensively. Hold on, let's. I think I'm kind of making this podcast a little bit longer and kind of get my point across longer than it should be. Yeah, I was gonna dive into just like a few other players, like specifically forwards for the team. Also, sorry if you're watching this on YouTube. It's a little bit darker because I don't have my light on and it's starting to become dark out. Anyways, yeah, I was gonna go in depth with like a lot of the forwards, but I don't think I really need to do that. Like, simply put, just they haven't really received a lot of offense just from all 4 levels, and no matter who they've paired up with for lines, and just for example, I guess Marchand, Elias, Lindholm, and Pastrnak, even like that line, which looks really great on paper, it just hasn't worked out, and just there hasn't been a consistent flowing line. It just simply put, there's just not a lot of offense, and just, yeah, I think really it all stems down to this team failing when it comes to retooling this team. If you look at teams like, I guess, the Stars, the Carolina Hurricanes, I guess, who else? Tampa Bay. But yeah, Dallas Stars and Carolina Hurricanes and other teams that have really been doing it, I guess. Oh, sick. So my camera died, which is great. That's just a reoccurring theme at this point. But when you look at just simply put, I think the Bruins have just struggled with retooling this roster. If you look at teams like the Carolina Hurricanes, the Dallas Stars, other teams that I'm kind of blanking on, but I guess even the Washington Capitals, like, these teams that have an aging core, but they've been able to draft really well to keep that roster together. And I understand it hasn't. It's not like the Bruins haven't been a great drafting team, but they also haven't had great selections recently. I'm not trying to defend Sweeney whatsoever in that aspect, because he, at the end of the day, he needs to draft and he needs to be great in that aspect. But the reason why the Bruins just haven't been able to, we're finally, again, as I was saying earlier in this episode, the Bruins are starting to really tail off, and it's just becoming that this team is aging more, and it's one of the older teams in the NHL. They just haven't been able to draft, which drafting is a huge part of retooling successfully. So again, look at the Carolina Hurricanes. I guess the prime example is the Dallas Stars. You know, getting guys like Jason Robertson, Logan Stankoven, Wyatt Johnston. What's the other guy? Like those three guys, even Ottinger, I guess. But like, just being a great drafting team to help out your aging core and just things like that. Even Tampa Bay, they've been drafting really great too, and just like making smart moves that have made their roster younger, things like that. I want to try to figure out like another team like that have been great drafting, but I guess those two teams. But yeah, it's just I just don't know where the Bruins will go right here. But honestly, those are just my thoughts about the Bruins, considering I've wanted to talk about this for a while, because again, I've been watching a lot of Bruins games this year and just wanted to voice my opinion about the Bruins, because I really do feel like I am able to talk about something that a lot of I guess people for the Bruins haven't really seen anyone take the Bruins so far into a wider perspective, or into just like a macro perspective on just their season. But yeah, just overall, the Bruins just haven't been great this season, and we're finally seeing this team that a lot of fans have been expecting this team to fall off recently, finally fall off. And yeah, I just think that I'm not optimistic for the Bruins. Like at most, I think that this team can sneak into the playoffs, just considering how weak the Eastern Conference is. But considering just, again, the Eastern Conference is just a shit show right now, with just like a lot of teams. There's not a lot of points separating the top wildcard spot from literally the bottom of the Eastern Conference. So it really just depends on how the Bruins play hockey up to this point. And even if they make the playoffs, like, I'm not expecting anything out of it. So we'll kind of just wait and see, and I'll make another episode if anything changes, if anything kind of goes on. Definitely talk about the deadline, because honestly, I don't know where the Bruins are going to go. It's going to be very interesting. And honestly, based on Sweeney, I think that they would go and buy, but it's just going to result in trading more draft picks and trading more prospects for nothing. But yeah, the Bruins are, honestly, it's not a disappointing season for the Bruins, but just considering that they've been a consistent playoff team, they've been bound to fall off, and it's just happening now. But yeah, that's about it.